6:01, I call this special meeting of the Kendall Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. I do not anticipate any closed session time today. First item on the agenda is the roll call. Andrew Bisco.
Here.
Sean Glovier.
Here.
Debbie Villagomez.
Here.
Maria Douglas.
Here.
Felicia Moody.
Here.
Darrell Owens.
Here.
John Clark here. We have a full board. Thank you. Item 3 is public comments on agenda items. Shall we see if anybody is signed up? It's a no one. Let the record reflect that no one has signed up for public comment on agenda items. We'll move to item 4, discuss renovations to Kennedale Junior High for transition of 6th grade for the 2022-2023 school year. Mr. G.
So I will pick up here. We, after the last meeting, we talked about phasing it and how that would look. Phase 1 for us will actually be the junior high school this summer. We're going to propose, when Josh gets up and gives the next lecture, of how we need to phase the next portions of the projects. But in order to make everything happen, phase 1, which is the junior high project, has to take place this summer. So Robert's going to kind of go through what those modifications are and go through that for you.
All right, board members, good to be with you this evening. We have been meeting with Mr. G, staff, and have looked at the mission critical areas specific to the junior high since we're bringing extra kids on here. And we've identified a couple of things that we believe need to be addressed as part of the movement of the students over there, just to accommodate a little more ease of operation. I'll try to go to full screen here. Do this. Where is it?
Down a little bit further, full screen.
Oh, there we go, yeah. All right. Yeah, there we go. So, critical areas. First and foremost, restrooms. Restrooms are going to be a challenge. You guys have appropriate fixtures. The problem is the restrooms that are down here are generally cut off by the renovation of this area here for the weight room. So students would have to do a lot of transversing through the corridors to get down to generally an unsupervised area, if you will. So what we've looked at doing was the possibility of taking the 2 large restrooms that are contiguous with the library and across from the library, but contiguous with the teacher's workroom and break room, and converting those to 2 singles so that you have 1 male, 1 female to serve staff that are accessible through the workrooms there. And then from each corridor side, have a men's and women's, boys and girls restroom for the students. That would add, I think, some easy access for students and bring them a little closer to the classrooms and mitigate the transition. Second thing is secure vestibule. We've talked about this at Arthur, and so while we're here, we're looking at creating a secure vestibule at this campus as well. In an effort to gain or maximize utilization of classrooms and be, I think, responsive to how the campus is being utilized right now, what we're looking at doing is creating a smaller choir room in this area, essentially creating an egress corridor here and providing egress here. And of course there'll be doors to serve the choir room, maintaining these 2 spaces here for either small instruction or offices, and then doing some demolition / remodel, nothing major, but taking down a couple of walls so that we can expand those practice rooms and provide some special ed classrooms contiguous with that choir space. There will be some acoustical treatment proposed in the choir room to mitigate any noise attenuation through the campus. We also want to address some challenges with life skills right now. It's a small space. We feel like if we can create a doorway into the contiguous classroom there, we can broaden the utilization of that space and give that program not just an instructional space, perhaps that life skills living area space as well, but provide easy access and supervision for both of those areas and really expand that program. And then finally, I don't know if you guys have been into the old dressing rooms over here. They need a little love. But structurally, because of the tilt wall constructions, the CMU block walls, going through there and doing extensive renovation is gonna set off a domino effect of a lot of code issues and that type of thing. We looked at perhaps coming in off that corridor to create some restrooms, and it's just really difficult with this concrete corridor that exists in the back there. So what we're looking at doing in those spaces to provide dressing rooms for the sixth grade and space for other needs is basically going in there and cleaning up the space, painting it, adding some finishes, and making those as attractive as they should be for students. Maybe some minor restroom renovations. There's at least one small restroom in that space, but basically just dressing that up, putting lockers in there, and providing space for sixth graders. You can see the budget there at the bottom. We've tried to go through and be responsive on the various areas, outline the scope of work for you to consider. Timing-wise, obviously to get it done this summer, we need to move pretty quickly, but this is a type of project that we think is geared perfectly for job order contracting, and so we'd like to explore that opportunity, and I think have some discussion with you guys about that. That doesn't eliminate the need for an architect or engineer as part of the process, but it sort of creates a partnership with an architect, engineer, and your contractor so that we can begin the schematic design process of what exactly needs to go on or needs to be proposed in those areas, and we can get pricing back to you in short order. It also provides a mechanism for us to exploit the various purchasing co-ops. Most of the vetted job order contractors are available through the purchasing co-ops, and so we can get very competitive pricing that way as well, and it'll help us get that pricing done, have that before you for consideration, so that when the students vacate the building, we can get in there over the summer and get that work done. So, happy to
This is
answer
not
your
an
questions.
action item tonight, this is an informational item. Thursday night, we will have it to approve the method of delivery as job order contracting for Thursday night, but this is just for your information tonight, so you understand where phase one, where we're headed.
My
Question.
eyes are bad. I can't read those numbers.
That's on purpose. Sorry.
Can you help me out?
I can. Actually, let me see if I can do something here.
That helps you.
So, coming in a little bit clearer.
Look too much into this.
There we go. That a little better for you?
That's good.
So, that's what we're looking at.
So I guess I can start off with a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
How much was the cost for the back gym area on the pre-K early childhood center that we were looking at? How much was that?
Just shy of 300,000, I believe, 272, something like that. Yeah.
Yes,
Budgeted was, I think, 245.
Yeah.
about 245. Okay, and that would get me the area in the back that we were gonna kind of put on hold. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That's gonna be in his presentation.
Okay, I just wanted to check the money again.
Yeah.
So can you explain to me a little bit more? I know that when we did way back, we looked at all the buildings. We were very clear that the high school could accommodate additional children. The junior high could accommodate the additional children. The grade schools, once we took out kindergarten and first, could accommodate fifth. And so that's why we picked Arthur. So can you explain to me now, we are very pressured for time, money, resources. Why are these changes incumbent now?
The short answer is,
What?
Why are these changes incumbent now, when we are already pressed for time, money, resources, and we had to already kind of put on hold an area that was for the pre-K, who our early childhood center is our priority, and now we're adding an additional
I think these were
$450,000?
always in consideration, they were just, I mean, they were on the tables that they're to be done. It's just now that we're gonna sit there, you have to approve the method of delivery, so we have to get that into you, so that's why we're doing it this month, so we can start with the process.
I think it might help to go back and explain that in terms of moving grades, there's a shift from what we were talking about. So maybe we need to be clear about saying who's moving next year, if anybody, to Arthur. Because I think plan is, it has changed trying to get all these things done in sequence.
So maybe we need to see Josh's presentation first, so,
Yeah.
before we kind of answer some of those other questions. I think that'll help, so
Okay.
we'll go through with Josh's.
Because when I'm kind of looking at this, nothing seems incumbent to accommodate additional numbers. These are things to ease of operation, make them nicer, a little bit larger, but nothing that would be incumbent and urgent required in order to have that building function, when our priority has always been from the beginning and should stay the early childhood center.
Correct. I will say, just from our meetings with staff, from an instructional perspective, I think one of the concerns that is on the back of everybody's mind is to make sure we have appropriate spaces for special ed or pull-out programs for students that are struggling. As we pile 600 or sixth grade students in there and looking at the available classrooms, we looked at the practice rooms and the choir as an opportunity to create more instructional space to accommodate those programs. I would hazard to say that that is somewhat critical in appropriately providing for all the students' needs at the campus. The restrooms is certainly a convenience issue, but it's also shy of having the kids migrate so far into an unsupervised area. You know, maybe a lesser priority, but long-term, if not short-term, certainly something to be considered.
I think there's a lot of long-term probably
Yeah.
benefits that we could do to a lot of the schools, but again, you assured us that this campus could accommodate the additional students.
Sure.
And I don't recall in the conversations that it could accommodate them, but we would need to do some work to it to the tune of $450,000.
And I understand. I think once we spent good, extensive time with staff, we looked at how that building would live and breathe, these recommendations, that's why we're presenting them to you for consideration, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And the recommendations are, again, we would modify the choir area, we would modify bathrooms, and then there was one section for special ed, is that correct?
Correct. We have special ed over near the choir room and addressing a little bit further expansion of the life skills program in this area here.
Do we have anyone that can address how many additional students for sixth grade would be coming in that would require special ed services? How many additional students does that look like?
I think we're talking 3 or 4.
So for 3 or 4 additional students, we're saying that it's incumbent upon us to right now make these changes to this building to make this accommodation.
Well, that doorway right there it's just creating a doorway between those 2 buildings. That's not
That's not a big cost.
pretty minor.
Well, the whole cost is $450.
Correct.
And my area in the back where we talked about the early childhood center, which again was our priority that we had to sort of discuss cutting for right now and postponing, which really changes the whole nature of the early childhood center, was $245,000.
I think the plan is now you're gonna get all those things, you just get them done next year and open the school a year later.
Like I said, I think if we
Okay.
can get to
Yeah.
Josh's presentation, that'll answer a lot of your questions. So.
I mean, the object is, you gotta move one grade, let the sixth grade progress like we planned. Fifth grade, you're gonna move fourth graders by normal movement to fifth grade. Put those, because we can make them work in the space we have while we do other renovations to that building, so that by the end of next year, by 2023, sorry, yes. It's probably 2023, that building is done. Both buildings are done and available for use completely.
I'm just looking at the money as
I
well.
understand that. I understand
I'm just
that.
looking at the money.
That's a
We've had
fair
extensive
comment.
conversations
Yeah.
about wants and needs for the early childhood center, and the early childhood center has always been the priority and why this whole thing started. So when we're talking wants and needs for an early childhood center and we're making cuts and constantly having that conversation, and now we're putting something else on the table for $450,000 for ease of operation, for, other, things that I've heard. I want to hear this presentation. I'm just concerned about why we're focused on this when we're having some struggles with the early childhood center.
Okay, so in our discussions during the snow days off, we looked at what's the best way to try to accommodate everything that we wanted to do with the early childhood center, but also be able to do it and phase it into phases to where it can be done in a manner that is not gonna put us in a time crunch and everything else. So when we started looking at it and talking through it, we came up with basically 3 phases. Phase 1, which you just saw. Phase 2 is phase 2 and 3 is what Josh is about to go through right now. So I will turn it over to you, Josh.
Quickly, before you start that, was any of this, we had talked about it, we had discussed it earlier,
I'm sorry?
is any of this possible for our workers to our maintenance workers to do any of this work?
Some of it, but not all of it. I mean, so like at the junior high, that's why we're looking at the job order contract, because we can do like the certain things, but
But it's still within that budget that we're showing the 450.
well, our guys can do, like I said, you know, there's certain aspects of it that our guys can do, but there are other things that need to be done. With the restrooms, with the conversions of the restrooms, we're gonna have to sit there and make sure that we have engineering, you know, lined out with that, so.
But the restrooms that we're using right now, I mean, it may be optimal to make the changes, but it's functioning right now for the junior high, the way those restrooms are.
Well, you only got one restroom that's actually on that.
You have 2 restrooms,
Oh.
2 main
Two sets.
restrooms, one in the back hall, one in the side hall. The other restroom was for game night, so, I mean, that's PE in those areas, but as far as a 3rd restroom, there's not a 3rd restroom available to students. So having one in a close proximity to the students where monitoring, that was the priority of getting that done and fixed. Those bathrooms that are in the faculty lounge right now were originally, looks like they were designed to be intended to be student restrooms, but they were never turned into student restrooms. We're looking to turn them back into student restrooms.
But we function with them as they are currently, and it's worked.
But that campus is about to get, what,
We're functioning
50%
right now with
increase
2 grade
of
levels
students
Right.
too,
And
so
at a 3rd grade level.
how many, what will the campus population be next year if 6th grade goes?
Can't hear you, Sean.
What's the campus population?
What will the campus population be once 6th grade's
What's the
added?
6th grade there?
We're adding 600 more students, didn't you say? How many total?
21 more special education students at the junior high next year.
But they won't all be in that one classroom.
What's relevant in this case is that we're going from 8 students in essential academics to 11 students in essential academics. And the students in essential academics have different needs. So that's important. And then what's the next question?
Total population.
Anticipated.
And what is it now? What will it be next year?
Okay, I thought the number.
While she's looking that up, Mr. G, you said that, or maybe he said it. I know you said we have to have engineers, but would he have, for phase 1, with these changes, we would have to go through the bidding and 3 bids and 3 contractors and 3 architects, and we'd
Job order
listen to their
contract.
presentations again and,
No.
okay.
We actually, the actual fee level for the architect will probably be within Mr. G's spending limit, but the idea is to engage a job order contractor that has an architect on staff or an architect under contract that can provide the appropriate level of design documents to get permitted by the city. That's what we're after. The scope of work is going to require you guys to approve the ultimate construction contract as well as get the city to approve permitting for us. So we'll need those design documents prepared by a firm that will likely be partnered with the job order contractor.
Okay.
So we're going from approximately 460 this year to 650 approximately next
650,
year.
okay.
And that includes the additional special education.
I don't have my hearing aids,
Thank
so I
you.
can't hear anybody, so you're gonna have to- Here's something she gave me. 456.
Good, okay. So this, I'm calling phase 1, this is phase 1 for the early childhood center and phase 2 for the early childhood center. So this is what you've seen before, just to reiterate that the new drive and the playscapes are still part of our phase 1 that we're doing for the early childhood center. This is the same plan that you've seen, I've just kind of simplified it in terms of the colors. So yellow now represents the areas that we're touching as part of phase 1. The green color represents the areas that we're touching as part of phase 2 from our previous conversations, which essentially takes care of the rest of the 2-story building and the areas in the 1-story building that we were not touching, as well as the art building out back and the music gym further out back to turn that into the interactive learning area. And then for future consideration, the competition gym is part of a phase 3, which I'll outline here in just a second. And then really the only area that's not in scope with the gray color is the kitchen area that was recently updated not all that long ago, so we'd leave the finishes there as is. So this breaks down what we're looking at for phase 2 scope. As mentioned previously, these are updating finishes throughout the rest of the 1-story and 2-story building, the restroom finishes. There's some wall demo that needs to occur on the 2nd floor to make a larger classroom, relocate some doors up there, room signage, providing an allowance for doors and hardware where we may need to replace those based on the scope. Transferring the music gym, like we talked about last time, into this phase 2 scope, so that's the $245,000 there. Providing the environmental graphics that I showed you at a previous meeting in those kindergarten classrooms, and then doing maybe one in the dining area to kind of liven up that space as well. And then capturing the finishes in that art specials building out back. So you see the subtotal there of $1,530,000. We'll have general conditions, fees and permits estimate there. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment budget at $214,200. And then design contingency of 5% if anything changes as we get into the documents or we go look at the building in more detail in those areas will help cover that. And then knowing that this would bid next year, escalating that out to account for potential cost increase. That gets us to $2,172,600 as our estimate for phase 2. Phase 3 really focuses on exterior scope with paint, marquee, improving lighting, landscape, canopies, and then that gym scope, updating the finishes within that space. These numbers here are based on numbers as of today, not escalating that out, just not knowing when that might happen.
So the phase 3 of what you're showing us is not something we've discussed before this.
Correct. Yes, sir. That's right.
So can you go back to the big picture? So we had another graphic at the time that was staged out, but basically the idea would be that 6th grade would go to junior high next year. The 5th grade would stay at Arthur and stay in the 1- and 2-story section. The other section in yellow would be under construction during the school year next year. We would leave pre-K and kinder where they are for one more year. That would allow them to sit there and have the time to scope everything out the way it needs to be done. Once they get the yellow part done, then they will start moving into, over the summer, moving into the second, the 2-story part of the building and making the teal changes. That would be phase 2. That would allow us to get everything done. And the whole, all the kindergarten classes, all the pre-K classes, 1st grade touched, all of it touched before those kids come into the building. And get the gym and the art areas done as well.
So I'm sorry, so for next year, you're wanting which grade levels?
Just 5th grade on that campus, so.
Just 5th grade?
Just 5th grade. So we can sit
At
there and have
Arthur?
room to do the space. And the other reality is that on the left-hand side of the yellow part of the building, that allows us construction zone, shutting off that parking lot and having construction zone on that side of the building. You only have 1 grade level for flow. You're only affecting 1 grade level by moving next year. And that grade level will move to the junior high the year after that. So on the right-hand side over here, your traffic flow would come through this side. You have your drop-off there in the main part of the building that they'll be in. And the traffic area on the other side will be shut off for construction area.
Can I ask what the thought is in deciding to only move 5th grade up versus moving?
To have space to do the renovations.
Versus moving just 6th grade, pre-K up?
You'd have to have them in the zone where you're actually doing your construction. The problem is you're not gonna be able to finish your construction over the summer. So if you don't have the buildings, the stuff in yellow done, you can't put the students in there.
I get,
So when did we decide?
If we have 2 grade levels on that campus.
We did.
I'm
We don't
not
have room
saying
for
to,
that.
I'm just saying what's the,
Because you're only moving 1 grade level. And
Yeah.
we're not disrupting pre-K classrooms, we're not moving, all we're doing is, your 5th grade teachers are already on that, and all you're doing, their stuff is already on that campus, we're not having to move everything. and we only have the one grade level that would be bumping up, and they're gonna be bumping to the next grade level, the next campus, the next year.
So I think I understand why you're asking, because we had all this conversation around which campuses were doing what, and the whole thing was, we don't want to move kids too many times,
Right,
and that's why we chose this.
because they would be going to their forever
Yeah.
home if we just moved, if it
And as
was
we-
pre-K only that went.
As we have progressed through this and how it was gonna facilitate this staging better, having just the fifth grade on this campus works best for us. And we're not having to move all the furniture and all the other stuff that we're gonna have to move over the summer to accommodate that. It's just one grade level moving up, and those teachers are already on that grade level.
Our original discussion was to move some of them possibly in the middle of the year, in December. Because that was what we were gonna be able to hopefully finish by December.
I
Yeah,
think
this-
that's worse, though,
Yeah,
because then
and moving
you're
it
having to
twice.
reteach a new campus, and
And
Least amount of moving and allows us to get
Yeah.
the timeline and get everything done.
I guess the other thing I'm thinking too is if we only have space for one grade level, if we moved pre-K, pre-K doesn't currently go to specials, right? They're not going to specials, they're not being serviced with GT, I don't think,
They're not going to, okay.
Pre-K usually
Yeah.
doesn't go to
no.
special.
no, the
So-
problem,
hold on,
okay,
One at a time, guys.
yes, sir.
So I guess I'm just trying to understand from a feasibility, from the amount of staff you would need to service fifth grade with specials, with GT, with, all of these things, why would we not just go ahead and do pre-K that doesn't have specials, they don't have GT, they don't have these intervention type things?
Because the amount of space for kindergarten and fifth grade on Delaney and Patterson, it's more space. So with pre-K, they have the classrooms and also the toilets. We talked about the toilets for little girls. My pre-K daughter cannot sit on the toilet at our, they have to have a little toilet, so they won't have time to swap them out. That was one of the
I mean, I think this whole conversation came up, we talked about wanting to get it done. We're in a time crunch to get even the yellow done over the summer. I mean, it could be done,
Yeah.
but it'd be a
No,
crunch.
Yeah,
And the issue here is, to do all this and accomplish what we want, what's needed is time. Time for them to plan, design, and build. The proposal that's being presented, I think, is basically, rather than trying to shove everything as much as we can in the first summer, the least amount of work needs to be done in the junior high, which we can do over the summer, right? We can start that project over the summer and get that done over the summer. That campus will be untouched when school starts. There'll be enough room with the fifth graders at this campus that they'll be able to be serviced in a way that's not gonna be disruptive. The whole left side is, all the yellow will be going on all year.
So question, you brought up something about the bathrooms, Dr. Vu. These bathrooms here right there, they're yellow, so they're gonna get fixed, right? That's the plan? They're gonna get fixed over the summer?
so this restroom here, we're touching more because
smelly
that is, yes,
Yes.
and that's
Okay.
not currently ADA accessible. The restrooms here, fixtures, we were gonna leave fixtures alone, replace finishes, toilet partitions, because that is currently ADA accessible.
Okay, but we were
So-
talking about bringing in smaller toilets, I think, too. So are we bringing in smaller toilets and then putting fifth graders in that building?
No,
no,
no.
the fifth graders are in the green
Oh,
part.
they're gonna, okay, all right, all
Keep the
right,
fifth graders in the blue section, whatever space is
fine,
needed.
that's fine.
Do all the renovations to get the pre-K and K in a place that works, functional. I mean, again, if you go back to this last page and look at it in terms of the sequence, that kind of helps you understand that construction of everything could be completed by August of '23 versus trying to get one piece done, have kids in classrooms, trying to work it during the year. You know, you do the whole building, and I think you have a completed campus by August 23rd, hopefully.
I get it, and I'm on board with phasing, that's what, we talked about, I'm not arguing about that. I just, in my head, it doesn't make sense to have, for me, it makes more sense to go ahead and move pre-K instead of having fifth move again, and then you have,
Well,
are we
fifth
gonna
grade's
have?
gonna move no matter what, so
They're
even
going
if it was
somewhere.
fifth and sixth grade next
They were
year, the fifth
supposed
grade
to
was
be
gonna
staying.
move to that campus, and then they're gonna move to the sixth grade the next year, so.
Well, no, because they were gonna stay at the elementary, so that wasn't,
we don't have enough pre-K classrooms to fit fifth grade in, I don't believe. That's a bigger
Dr. Booth here.
Yeah.
issue. If we move the pre-K off and moving fifth grade down,
But if we keep
we would not have
junior
enough
and
room.
fifth, like fifth grade's a big class there, Delaney, I can tell you the exact number, we don't have enough rooms to keep fifth grade and also add.
So is fifth grade gonna have we'll have a special teacher for all of fifth grade?
We'll work it out. Yeah, they may have to go across. We're looking at the staffing currently. I was waiting till this board meeting before I put more time into the,
It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the other piece of it that may help is you're moving, the reason we're doing the construction on the left-hand side is we need bigger classrooms for the pre-K. So you can't bring pre-K over if you haven't expanded the size of the rooms yet.
Half of them already are big. They're already bigger than what they're in right now.
Right, but that hasn't been construction yet. So if you moved them over, you'd have to put them over on the right-hand side.
I don't know.
And then change it halfway through the year. It'd be terrible.
It's just-
Fifth grade, library, fifth grade, teachers, fifth grade teacher stuff, all already on that campus. That's why looking at keeping the fifth grade there, as opposed to having to move the fifth grade off to another campus and then move all the other, I mean, that's a lot of moving.
right now,
For
Delaney
1 year.
has 7 fourth grade classrooms, so those will be fifth grade next year with that, ratio. And we have 6 pre-K classrooms, so if we kept fourth grade, then we need 7 more classrooms than we have currently. We don't have enough room.
What about Patterson?
At Patterson, this year we have 5 fourth grade classrooms, so we'll be at 3 next year.
How many you said? I'm sorry.
5, and then we have 4 kindergarten. So let's just say we have 4 or 5 kindergartens, so we have to have 5 more rooms at Patterson and 7 more rooms at Delaney. Delaney does not have 8 rooms, let alone 7. It's just, I hear what you're saying.
I just know pre-K is struggling at Delaney because they have to be quiet in the hallways, they're not getting special, so I guess, but, I don't know. There's been discussions that we aren't privy to, so I don't, maybe I'm.
Correct.
Well, and I'm gonna piggyback off that, because I think there's been a lot discussed
Exactly.
between our last board meeting and this board meeting, that we went from the right direction to the left direction to we're like on a totally different page now. And we're being presented this today for votes Thursday, 2 days from now. And this is a lot to re-assimilate into what we had initially said as to who was moving when and what time frame. We said that yellow section could be done and ready. And now we're like, it's not gonna be ready and we're totally this is a lot. This is
You
a
also said that
totally
you didn't
different
want to
direction.
have some kindergartners in classrooms that hadn't been touched, and this way it allows us to stage it and get it all done before we move those kids in there, to where you're not having kids in one type of classroom and kids in another type of classroom, which is one of the biggest concerns we had at the last board meeting, and trying to address that and make sure that everything in this building is touched before those pre-K through first graders come into that building, to where they're all stepping into the, equitable facility, and that was the biggest issue that we were trying to
Right.
address.
And I understand, what I'm saying simply is that I'm gonna venture to say hours of conversations have gone on to get where we're at in tonight's discussion. I have not been privy to those hours of conversations where I could sit down and say, what were the pros, what were the cons, which way we're doing it now, what grade we're leaving, how many rooms we need where. I wasn't privy to any of that discussion.
And that's why we're having a special meeting before the regular meeting on
For 2
Thursday.
days from now, and I have to vote in what the best interest of the district is.
And the issue is that the longer we talk, the further out it pushes it. I mean, we're kind of trapped
I
by
agree,
trying to get it
but the
done.
longer people talk without the board, the more complicated this gets, because from last meeting to this meeting, there
Yes.
was a lot of conversations that have apparently gone on that none of us were privy to.
Well, again, this is superintendent and the architect and construction teams
understand.
make these decisions.
But this
We
is
overdo.
major difference.
No, the question is, do you want to do the junior high over the summer or not? That's question 1. If you don't do it. And put your efforts into getting this done. Do you still want to move kids into this if it's not done after it's summer? That's my concern, is we get it half done. There are always problems. Seems to me the safer position for our children is the more continuity they have, the better off they are. So again, kids at 2 elementary schools, if you had a 5th grade at each school, they could accommodate them. Right, there's no movement. There's none. But we're not gonna have enough space unless we move somebody else. So do you wanna move the pre-K and K if it was done? If it was done, that's the question.
Or just pre-K, if we only have room for one, because, I don't know.
I think the
It
conversation
sounds
we
like
started
that's not
talking about,
logistical
there
from
was
what
not
I
enough
understood.
time.
It doesn't sound feasible.
We just don't have enough classrooms and elementary campuses to accommodate fit and additional kindergarten.
I'm just presenting about, what about just pre-K only?
But still fifth grade would stay on the campus and would still get more kindergarten kids, so we'd be losing one.
Why wouldn't fifth grade just go to?
'Cause- okay, so can we go back through? First, let me say, I have a comment. I think the frustration of the board is valid. And I think the board's frustration should be honored and recognized because we started this process in November. We were scheduled to have 2 meetings where we walked the campus that did not occur until much later. In the middle of all of that, there was a conversation with staff, and I said at the time, that is an appropriate conversation to have, but the public needed to be involved in that. So had we done all of this in the beginning, we probably would not be where we are. With that being said, this information helps us make better decisions about where to go. I just wish it had happened in December and not January, February, where we're having 2 days to make a decision to vote. With that being said, 21, 22 is where we are right now. The summer of 22, what is the expectation to happen for this summer? If we vote on this and we vote favorably on this, what's the plan for this summer?
Quickly, before he answers that, you're talking 2 different projects. He's only responsible for one.
I just want to know what is the one
So-
or 2? Right now, nothing's clear.
So for Arthur, as we previously discussed, the secure vestibule, anything that we were doing in the 2-story building would be the priority. And right now.
Starting this summer?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And the only thing that we're currently doing as part of phase 1 in that building is the secure vestibule. So that would be complete over the summertime. They would start on all the other areas in yellow, the back drive, and the playscapes. But as we previously discussed, the ability for them to get that amount of scope done over the summer is not likely, so it'd probably wrap up at the end of the year for a mid-year switch. So they're gonna start on everything during the summer, with priority being the secure vestibule, getting that done in the 2-story building.
Hold on, you just said switch?
Well, that was just before we had phases about this project, phase
Okay.
1, phase 2, it was, we were gonna get this done, and then that would be done, more feasible timeline end of the year.
Okay, I think we're just looking at this here, because when you go back to that, you're losing me, so.
Okay, so this
So-
summer, Arthur, yellow, you're Arthur.
Would start,
Will start.
yes, ma'am.
Okay,
22, 23, Arthur, yellow, and green, or just yellow?
yellow
Those
should be done.
done.
Yellow will
summer.
be done, green will start.
Yellow and our estimate would be done at the end of this year. Once the contractor gets on board, they would validate that. That is our estimate right now of how long that would take to get the areas in yellow, the back drive and the playscapes done.
End of 2022.
Yes, ma'am. So
Okay,
we will start, in that last slide regarding the schedule, when we go for permit of phase 1, that'll inform us how long is it gonna take us to permit phase 1. That'll help inform us how long it may take to permit phase 2. So we may adjust that phase 2 schedule to accommodate permitting timeframes. If there are more areas of the building available, if there's only 1 grade level, can we potentially, my team, get the construction documents going sooner, instead of following the schedule that we currently are on for phase 1, to help that, what has to happen over the summertime of next year.
so then in August of 2023, it will be completely finished.
That's the goal for
Okay.
phase 1 and 2. I know phase 3 is, for this project, phase 3 is something new, but
Phase 3 is
that was the goal
the
for
gym.
the start
So
of,
if,
the purple.
No,
Right.
No,
so 1,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
if you wanna touch the outside.
which we haven't talked about at all.
Gym.
right.
So for me,
And
Be-
outside.
okay, for
This-
me, I mean, it's a lot to process. I mean, maybe you guys have more construction mind than I
That's
do.
outside.
Oh,
I'm understanding, at least I'm buying into the understanding of why doing this makes sense from your standpoint, and also what Superintendent said. I'm not exactly a big, fan of the outcome, because I was hoping to have something totally different, by what I've been telling people, okay? So, I said all that just to let you know that, I'm still processing, and, thank you for clarification. But keep talking, because the more we talk about this, the clearer I get, because it's just a lot, because I'm gonna have to explain to my neighbor what's going on. And I need to make sure I understand what and why, and what the benefit's going to be. So, okay, I'm not doing the presentation now, we're probably to approach this first from saying this is where we were, and because of this, this, and this, some adjustments gonna be made, and maybe I could have intaken it a little bit better. So you're gonna have to give me a little leeway here as I process.
I have an additional question here. So we've got in this presentation here in our packet, we've got quotes for phase one, or phase two, phase three. Does phase one stay the same?
Yes, phase
And that
one
does
is.
not, but that does not include the phase one part that is the junior high, which is
No.
$450,000.
No, when I was referencing phase 1 and 2, that was
Okay.
strictly for
All right.
my project.
And we need to cause these phases,
Something
we need to
else.
call something else, because the junior high is not part of his project.
Okay.
So that, what they're calling phase,
It's called
Free-
prerequisite.
yeah. is confusing us. So phase one with Huckabee is the yellow section of Arthur. Phase two
Yes.
is the green section of Arthur. And his phase three is something that was not in scope
Something
at
new.
all.
Okay.
Okay,
Right,
we
that
haven't
was something
discussed that
new,
at all
just,
yet.
it's the
Okay.
only area that we weren't touching. We
Okay.
weren't touching anything on the exterior, so it's just
I
informational
just wanted to
purposes
put it
for
in
you.
here,
Yes,
so you have the information.
we
Yep.
got good
It's an
information.
informational meeting, that's
In,
what it
in case we
Okay.
want to
Right.
do additional things,
Right.
okay? Now, that's all of Huckabee. Now, the junior high is a whole different thing, which is another $500,000, which is renovating the choir room, doing a secure vestibule, and redoing some of the restrooms, which has nothing to do with him, and we would have to deal with this gentleman here to make sure that construction and that gets all that constructed together. So that's two separate projects, two separate people, two separate things.
thank you, Ms. Risco, because that was going to be my next question.
Just so
I'm
we're-
trying to have a chart,
And calling it two things, the same name.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, we should at least get 1A, 1B, something like that, or 1A being Arthur, 1B being 1J.
But we need to make that clear, not only to ourselves, but to the people that listen to this, that is two separate things.
So just to be clear here, because I just added it all up, that's $6.2 million between three phases and then junior high. So I just want us all to be aware of that.
We're gonna be able to fit that number under our,
That's the next part of the info is we're gonna talk numbers.
Again, understand the discussion on Thursday is to how we take care of, if we are doing the junior high project, but how we deal with that, because it's not within their process. How do we get it done, where we contract with someone? That's what the conversation's about Thursday. And if there is no interest in doing that, or feel there's a need to do that, again, Dr. Booth said we got at least a bathroom issue that we may have a problem with. We need to recognize that. I mean, I think staff and the people who are familiar with how things are designed and built looked at it and said, we're very ambitious trying to do this. It's probably not realistic. And that's when I think this conversation changed. It's not realistic to think that we can do what we want to do and do it well and correctly within the summer.
I think the original part of the thing was when we were looking at this, when you start moving into the third, or do you have any more questions for Josh, or can we let Josh?
I do have one more question. I heard you kind of make a comment that the number you were thinking in your head for the grand total was a little bit different than what Mr. Glovier just said. Is that correct?
get 3.3.
Yeah, it's
Phase one was like 2.2.
Well,
2.172.
If we're doing 2.7 for phase 1, and then phase 2 is 2.1, and then phase 3 is 792,
For
No,
am I,
Phase one is 450
phase
plus
two,
this.
2.1.
well,
Okay, can I, so phase one is still 2.8 million. That's
Yeah.
the yellow
For-
portion of
for
it.
Right.
That's
That's
2.8
phase
million.
one
That is
at
not, and that originally
Arthur.
came from when we were looking at how we're gonna fund this, because when I came into the district, I was told, we will not be able to go to a bond. So if we're gonna sit there and do this, how can we do this? So Mr. Adams came up with a number of 2.8 that he felt comfortable that we could take out of fund balance, okay? To address part of the issues. Now, as the scope got bigger and things wanted to get done, that's where the phase two comes in. That's the other 2.1 million right there for phase two, which is the teal portion of the picture. Phase three is the purple area. That's a want list or a wish list. You know, if we decide if we wanted to touch the outside, the exterior, the gym and all that stuff, that was never part of the scope. That was just on there as we could do this also. You know, I said, go ahead and put it on there so they can see it. But the original 2.8 million was what we went, when we were doing all the community discussions, what Mr. Adams felt like we could comfortably take out of fund balance, which we're gonna have a fund balance and all that discussion here in just a moment on finances. But that was what the original scope was, and they've worked really hard to try to stay within that scope. But the reality is, the whole building was gonna get touched. In order to touch the entire building, it's gonna take an additional 2.1 million to address everything on that building, go through the bathrooms and make sure that it's all good. You know, phasing it like we're talking about also allows us on that yellow section to go through those restrooms and really make sure that the plumbing and everything is the way it needs to be. You know, having entire grade level off of that campus and only one grade level there, and having that yellow section and the parking lot shut off for the traffic flow, getting into the restrooms and digging into them, this was the whole purpose of why we looked at phasing it the way we did. It also took pressure off of these guys to sit there and be able to sit there and feel like they could meet timelines and get what they needed, and we could do it in a manner where the entire building was touched before we moved pre-K through the first grade into the building. That's where we came up with this plan.
Okay, then, so for JAA, it is 4.4 million? Or it's still,
2.1.
we're with phase one and phase two?
Or it's almost 5.
It's 2.1 plus 2.8, basically.
Okay, so it's,
4.9. The
Okay.
exterior of phase three is another
right,
800, that puts you at just 5.6, 5.7.
So-
If you do the high,
Yep, sorry.
if you do the junior high, you're right at $6 million in terms of just roughing the numbers, if I do it in my head.
that's what you had, right?
Yeah, the only thing I was gonna add, the phase three scope for the gym and the exterior work, like I mentioned, those are numbers
Everything.
as of today,
Right.
not escalated like I have done for the phase two scope.
Okay.
So I know we're gonna have a discussion about finances here in a minute, so I just wanna, and that was a great summation, thank you, Mr. Chief. Okay, so the 2.8 roughly, right, we're still gonna have finance discussion. 2.8 roughly, we felt could come out of fund balance kinda comfortably. We kinda haven't figured out where the 2.1 would come from for phase two, right?
Well, we're about to have to.
Which is why we're about to have the conversation, right, so we'll see how that conversation goes. That is the priority right there, because that was the early childhood center, phase one and phase two, we said is our priority. Now, if we haven't even already figured out where all that's gonna come from, I'm really looking forward to the discussion to see where the additional 540,000 is gonna come from for the junior high. Because again, the priority, and I understand, I'm a little bit concerned that the junior high wants to come before, in the summer, versus the phase two of the early childhood center, which again is the priority, and we haven't even figured out where that money's coming from yet.
But remember, 2 projects.
I understand that, but one project is gonna take up potentially $540,000, and it's gonna happen first.
But those projects could be accomplished this summer. That was a big portion of that, of why, because those could get done
Right.
and knocked out of the way this summer.
So just show me the money.
Okay, so, everybody done with Josh?
We haven't eaten my lunch tonight.
All
Josh,
right.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, so if you go back to the letter that Mr. Adams had given you previously, some of this was already mapped out on that. where we go through what the fund balance was as of August 31st, 2021. We're sitting at $13,269,278. You'd approved 2 budget amendments for that year for $280,000, which was the demolition of the pre-K wing and the wiring to the building of $220,000. That, another amendment will be coming for E-rate for switches at $232,725. With these 3 amendments, available fund balance will be $12,756,523. Everybody good? Okay. From that, the estimates of renovation as a day can probably change, but the estimation for renovation for the junior high school, which we showed you before, 551, that has now come down to four whatever it was on the thing, 450. So that's 100,000 less than what we had on here previously. Okay, the renovations at Arthur, 2.789, that's the 2.8 million there. Those 2, taken from the 12 million, left us with a 9 million in fund balance, 9.4. So we've talked about operations, 3 months of operations, you know, that keeps us well above 3 months of operations. We're fine there. If we did not want to reduce the fund balance with some of the renovations at Kendall Junior High and James Arthur Intermediate, could be financed with what is called a tax maintenance note. So this is where the other portion comes into play. We can go out to a tax maintenance note. They are repaid out of maintenance operation tax rate. It does not qualify for the interest and sinking rate, which is the INS side. Only a portion of the $3,341,000 would qualify for the tax maintenance note. New construction, such as the new road at Arthur, would not. So he went through kind of these scenarios. So our options are to pay a portion of it out of the fund balance and do a tax maintenance note for the other portion of it. Now,
Well, I'm sorry, will you say that again?
do what?
Will you say will you say that again? You said the option balance and then
Portion
something
of
else.
it, what we originally talked about, was taking a portion of it out of
Where?
fund balance,
Okay,
which, if we looked at what we had on here, was taking out the 3.3, which was the junior high and the original scope of the Arthur project.
okay,
Taking that out of fund balance. The other portion we looked at doing a tax maintenance note. So, and putting that portion, so you're asking where that would come from, that would go off of our M&O side as a tax maintenance note. Now, the thing with that, you know, and this is what we were going to have our discussion with, is the fact that we have not had a bond in this district. And I know whenever I came in, that's why we were trying to be pretty frugal with all these numbers and everything, that the 2.8 was what we felt comfortable going out of fund balance from. But the reality is we have drawn down fund balance, we've addressed projects, we've put money back in fund balance. We've drawn down fund balance and addressed projects, and we've addressed, as we said, we've addressed a lot of projects in this district in a short period of time. We put money back in. We've drawn down and we put back in. So our fund balance is pretty healthy, but the reality is we cannot keep touching fund balance to get all of these. And at some point, if we're gonna continue to do the projects that are coming up in this district, and we have not gone to a bond since 2004, it's 18 years. And by the time we get through with some of these projects, it's gonna be close to 20 years that we have not gone to bond. And that bond in 2004 was passed in May of 2004, was for $40 million. Anything that we go to bond is nowhere near $40 million. But the reality is, if we're gonna keep touching, we can't keep drawing down our fund balance. And if we're gonna continue to touch on these projects, we're gonna have to look at the possibility that we're gonna have to go to bond to address these. We still have three buildings that have roof issues that we're going to have to address. We still have, day-to-day, maintenance that, HVAC issues that we're going to have to address. There are other things, and, as Mr. Clark had asked me to sit there and start putting back together. Whenever I came in the district, we did a comprehensive need assessment throughout our entire district. Well, we touched on a lot of those things already, but there are more things that are coming up that we're going to have to address. And so if we're going to sit there and look at this maintenance tax note, the reality is that if we did go to bond, you can always put that back into the bond. So it's on the M&O side, but that can be repaid and put back into the bond side, if we go to a bond at a later date. These are considerations. This is what we're having these conversations on. Mr. Adams has put together, a packet for you. He's shown you, in the first or the second sheet, what our fund balance was, our revenues, our expenditures, what was put into fund balance, what we spent down out of fund balance, what was put back into fund balance. So you see kind of the history of where the fund balance are, and where we have gotten to where we've gotten to. And on the very third page, if you look, if we took the junior high and this out of that, that's what it would bring it down to with our fund balance. Now, if you try to go to the other side with the fund balance also for the phase 2, that's gonna draw it down even further. And then you'll get about 7 million. So this is where, whether we decide to try to go to a bond, or we try to sit there and do a maintenance tax note, that's where the other money would come from. Does that answer your question, Ms. Douglas?
Sort of. Can you
Sort of, okay.
explain a little bit more to me the difference between the tax maintenance note and a bond? I got what a bond is, but how does that differ from the tax maintenance note?
We can issue the tax maintenance note without having to go out for a vote.
Okay,
You pay for it out of your M&O, which is your operational side, because
Okay.
your budget has INS and M&O. INS is where if you borrow the money, we have to pay that as a part of that fund, has to be designated and paid at a certain rate.
correct.
Tax maintenance note, we can, I guess, elect a periodic payment that fits within our budget, which is how long you pay it back. So it's internal, it's like borrowing the money from yourself, kind of,
Okay.
but paying it back out of the maintenance and operation cost is how I understand it. I think what's key that we, and Mr. G is right, we've gone from $40 million in debt. At the end of this year, we'll be at $19 million.
Which is
worth of debt.
amazing,
I mean,
amazing job.
for a district our size, again, having no debt would be unheard of.
Right.
Now, as I said in the last meeting, you don't necessarily continue to try to rebuild your house out of your operating account. You have to go borrow the money because it's a long-term expenditure. So I think a bond is the right discussion, but in the meantime, if something happens tomorrow, how do we get there where we accomplish what we want to accomplish? Get these two buildings up to grade, and then start talking about, we still have other things addressed, and that's where the bond discussion comes in. But, I mean, it seems to me, we're paying $4 million in debt this year, and we're talking about needing to borrow from ourselves another $3 million? I mean, we're managing the payment, and we're reducing our debt, but I think we'd eventually need to have our debt commensurate with our buildings and the average. I mean, you don't pay your house off in a year unless you're really good. You pay it out over 30 years. These projects are properly bond material. When you fix a building for 30 years, it's a bond. It shouldn't come out of your maintenance long-term. Again, it's just how do we bridge the gap? And that's how I understand the difference between the two. One is just paid out of our operating costs, where we're paying teachers and buildings and insurance and electric. It just pays that note that we borrow from ourselves, really.
So is the suggestion that we do we use the operating funds for some of that, which I followed all the math there, but for the phase 2, we do a tax maintenance note?
I think the proposal that we're being asked is basically spend about $3 million out of bond.
Right.
I mean, out of current
Fund balance.
fund balance.
Correct.
Which was the
And the rest
plan.
of this project be funded out of tax maintenance note.
Yeah, well, that was the plan, the first 3 million, right?
Yep,
And then the rest would be the tax maintenance note.
unless we can get to a bond, and if we get to a bond, we repay that tax maintenance note, it goes into the bond side.
We can still restructure it down the road
Yep.
if we need
I
to.
mean, I think we have, as a citizen and a taxpayer, nobody wants bond, but the reality is, it doesn't change our rates, because we have such low debt.
Right.
We might even, depending on what the market is, we might even get a bond that's a lower rate than we're at on some of our notes right now.
In the last 5 years, we have paid off $17 million worth of our debt.
Which is outstanding. I credit Jimmy for finding a way to get us low on debt.
Right.
But that's not long-term gonna be able to help us fix our buildings, and we don't say, we need to have some debt. It makes sense to have some debt.
I think we have been very practical and very frugal with the way we have approached it. We hit, like I said, we have touched on a lot of things.
Right.
And we've been able to replace the fund balance, and
Right.
we've touched on more things and put more back in. But we're at a point right now where we're not gonna be able to keep doing that and keep touching all these projects that we need to do. So
Correct.
that is where we're gonna have the realistic conversations that something's gotta give, you know? And we've done about all we can with what we've got, but in order to move forward and do what we need to do in our district, we're gonna have to have some realistic conversations.
So I need this point of clarification. I'm totally following what we're talking about. We will use the rest so that we can get phase 2 done would come out of a tax maintenance note. However, in the future, we could look at a bond, and then the bond would basically replenish the funds. Now, tell me how that theoretically works, because when you go to a bond, it's my understanding you're supposed to give the taxpayers, the bond for this much will cover this, the bond for this
Correct.
much will cover this, the bond for this much will cover this, and they have to vote yes or no, yes or no, yes or no.
Correct.
So how does that look when we've already paid for it all, sort of out of our own tax maintenance note?
I guess you're relying on the taxpayers to approve the.
Entire package.
I think the difference is, if
Basically
it's in the tax
refinancing.
maintenance note side, you think about paying that off relatively quickly. If you move it to the bond side, you're talking about paying it off over the life of that bond, which might be 30 years. You know, that's how I see it. It's just, plus, you know, there's an interest cost on the short term versus an interest cost on the bond, which is generally gonna be lower. Those are conversations we need to have. A bond package needs a year to discuss. But we wanna get these projects fixed this year.
Right.
So we've got to, you know, that's to me is what we're thinking about is if we all kind of agree that the funding can happen, then we're really talking about sequence, right? Do we want to do these two things over the summer or not? You know, that's really what it comes down to. It's really what it comes down to. If we recognize that we can make this work reasonably well, what sequence do we want? We're talking about what grades do we move? It's kind of a different discussion than the building projects. It really comes down to.
And how
And
comfortable you are
ultimately,
with the
what
money
grades are moving out,
left.
simply
Right.
because they're trying to facilitate, trying to incorporate what everybody wanted into a plan and phasing it to where they felt comfortable and we could get the permits and the inspections and all the stuff that we needed done in a timely manner. Also, the traffic, taking off some of the traffic flow off that campus to where we had less of an imprint. So there's a lot of those are the considerations of what we discussed on how to stage it and how to phase it, stage it, whatever you want to call it. But,
So-
you know, we felt like that gave us the best option.
So I still need to be a little more clear. So we, as a board, are going to decide at some point whether we are going to do phase 2 out of the tax maintenance note,
Yeah.
correct?
We have to make it, it's a budgetary consideration.
Right, so once we make that decision, then at a later date, we're saying we look at going to a bond to replenish that. And that's my question of how does that bond then look? Because again, my understanding is you're supposed to present the bond for this amount for these purposes. And then the taxpayers vote on that. So if we've already approved it to come out of tax maintenance, and we're asking them to simply replenish the whole amount, how does that look? Because if we went to bond right now, we would say, taxpayers, do you want to spend $450,000 on the junior high? Do you want to spend this amount on this amount on that? We're sort of doing it backwards, which is why I need to understand. We're saying we're going to approve the money. We've got funds it's going to come out of, but at a future date, we may go to bond and ask to have it replenished. So what would that bond look like? How's that going to be phrased? Taxpayers, we want you to pay,
I don't know the language, but you're gonna talk about, we wanna do these
That's where
projects.
we bring in
But-
financial aid.
but we've already.
One package,
Uh-huh,
whatever other things we want, I mean, we're gonna pay off this note.
right.
We're going to put a roof on the high school. We're gonna put a roof on Patterson. We're gonna, I mean,
Okay,
it's all, but
So,
it'll all be in one package.
one package,
Usually, when you see them split packages,
yes,
one is academics, one is
Athletics.
co-curricular.
okay. Okay, so basically the question we'd be posing to the taxpayers then at a future date is, taxpayers, do you want to go to a bond to replenish this tax maintenance or pay off this tax maintenance, or do you want it to stay out of tax maintenance?
I think you were oversimplifying.
Is that right?
That's oversimplified,
But basically,
but, I mean, that would be part of our, what we're wanting to fund.
right, because there could be other things we would want to fund as well. We may not just go for the simple amount, we may go for a different amount with some additional.
We should look at the needs of the district and
Right,
say,
at that time.
long-term, these are
Yeah.
things, it may be
Yeah.
maybe
Future.
$12 million a month.
Correct,
We
correct.
just don't know.
But for this portion of it, we would be saying,
We would pay off this tax maintenance note as a bond project. So again, think of it as, you're paying it out of your household income
Got it.
versus you're paying it lower interest rate over a longer time. That's really what the difference is.
Gotcha.
Basically, you got savings built up, and you say, I'm gonna go ahead and, because the contract is here, I need to pay it, I'll pay it, but I'm gonna borrow that money to pay my savings back.
I got it.
And if they say no, we still are able to fund it. It's just,
Correct.
again, understand the legislature changes the amounts that you can use on M and O and
Correct.
INS.
Correct.
There are, I think, currently less restrictions on INS in terms of,
It has to be voted on by the taxpayer.
right.
Yeah. And that's the other end of it that we also gotta remember, taxpayers can say no.
And if they do that, again, I think the object is for us to give them the information, here's what we need,
Right.
here's what would benefit our students. And the point is that you also say, it's just stretching the note out. If we have $19 million worth of debt, and we said we want to add another $10 million debt, we have 29. Well,
Right.
in 5 years, we reduced more than that.
Right.
So it just, over time, more people who benefit by that pay for it as part of the tax.
I think the crux of what you said there was important to me, that we would still be able to fund it either
Yes.
way. It's just a matter of what the taxpayers then later on come back and decide
Correct.
which way they want to keep it.
I mean,
I have a question that's not related to this, that's related to this. Sorry, in the agenda. If we do this phase 1, phase 2, maybe phase 3,
His project.
but if we do this, is this gonna be the building that we are happy with? Is this what you want? Yeah, I'm not him. He doesn't have to go work there. I'm asking you and you, like, what, are you guys gonna be okay with this building? Is this,
Are you gonna be okay sending your children there?
We haven't seen what we're working with them with the design and stuff, so yeah, I would say, yeah, it's gonna be a building that we're gonna be very happy with, you know? So
Okay.
the reality is it's gonna be a completely different environment than any of our other campuses. And that's the reality of what we're looking for.
Part of this, guys, is gonna be this board's particular legacy. All of us are gonna be either blamed or patted on the head for, this is what you did
Hence
with
the
my money.
questions, hence the questions.
And it's just one of those things that, if we're gonna do it,
I just wanna make sure that we'll be
Yeah.
happy
I
5
wanna-
years from now, 10 years from now, and we're not saying, man, I wish we would have done X, Y, and Z differently, more, bigger, smaller,
that's-
I don't know.
That was the whole part with the phasing, it was to, you know,
To do it
we were
right.
trying to sit there
Yeah.
and rush to accommodate
Right.
and get some things done, and the reality is, I don't think anybody was gonna be happy with what was coming out
Not
of that.
with the
So
rest of
it.
that's why we sat down and we worked through this, and we really kind of like, you know, Dr. Vu had a suggestion after the last board meeting, and then I said, well, we can't do that, but we can do this, and so we started looking at it, and this is, you know, one grade level on there allows us to start getting moving, you know, and having to not move a whole lot of stuff gets us moving, and, you know, I don't think people realize the logistics of all the moving and everything that has to take place, it's a lot, and this way, it's the least amount of intrusion into everything, and we can get moving faster, and that's kind of where we're sitting with this. But as far as like what we're looking for, you know, yeah, I think we're gonna get, you know, exactly what we want out of it, you know,
Okay.
so.
That's, because that's important, I think,
Well, I
you
mean,
know.
you can't just say it in isolation, because the reality is you could do something different. You could bond and build all new
Sure.
campus. Problem is, where are you gonna house your kids and where are you gonna put that building?
With what we're doing now, will we be satisfied when it's done, said and done? That's all I
You know,
wanted to
I think-
and I'm
know. It
gonna
sounds like we
I'm
will.
gonna be brutally honest with you, because, you know, I just sat in meetings, and, you know, every time every board faces this consideration, you know, it's like, you know, is what we're doing gonna make us happy? You know, and that's kind of where you're at, is that, you know, is what you're trying to do going to make you happy? And the reality is, we know what the concept is, we know what we want to accomplish with it. The design, you know, we got a pretty good idea what the design is moving towards. There's always things that pop up, there's always those things, so to sit there and say it's gonna be everything, you know, you can spend a lot of money and you can get the Taj Mahal, but, you know, the reality is you spend a lot of money to get the Taj Mahal, and, you know, there may be things that we're gonna have to sit there and look at and say, oh, you know, we may need to spend something down the road here, you know, I mean, I'm not gonna sit there and say it's gonna be the end-all, be-all, but
yeah.
I think it's gonna give us a very good
I
jump to
think-
what we're trying to do with our early childhood learning.
I think our community will appreciate the fact that we get what we need without going broke. I mean, again, and that's, you know, the reality, we
Yes.
fix buildings that we can continue to use, we make their life better and longer. I mean, everything we've been told about this building in terms of concept, what these children need is there. What we're really asking now is, can we wait a year to move them in? That's kind of where I feel like we're at, can we wait a year to move them in?
You know, another consideration, taking place is that we own a couple of parcels of land, but are they suitable to build an entire school on? And, when we were looking at the original cost, just to build a pre-K, just a pre-K, was 4.5 million, I believe, You're gonna touch
Without
three
staff.
grade levels, huh?
Without staff.
Without a cafeteria and without staff. So, I mean, you're looking at encompassing a whole lot more with grade level wise in one building and creating more space in other buildings to sit there and be able to function for the future. So, yes, in that aspect, yes, it's definitely gonna give us what we want,
Yeah, the district has options, we have land over there by the Kroger that we could sell in a heartbeat probably and get more apartments. We make a lot of money on it, but that's what you would get.
That's okay.
So is that what you want? I mean, there are lots of things that we can do. It's just a question of what we want the public to be on board with, and hopefully they would say, I mean, if their taxes continue to, I mean, our rates continue to go down. As a board, we've been able to get the rates to go down, and that's a good thing. If we just continue the same rate and have more debt on it, it's just a longer time to pay it off.
And when we put this in the thing,
No, my question was answered. Thank you very much for the,
question?
no, that was her question. Did I have a question that was cut off? And my answer was no, it was answered.
Yeah, I think that's, sorry for the confusion, but the reality is, we're looking at, we were thinking of it from the aspect as we did the agenda today, this is what needs to happen this summer, the next, thing that's gonna happen, then they'll start this summer too, I mean, they're gonna start, they'll start in March and April, and, demoing in other places, I mean, the construction company, but the reality is full construction won't happen until the summertime, starting, so we were just looking at how do we sit there and put this together so it makes sense. Well, it ended up confusing y'all more than it did anything else, but the reality is, I apologize for that, but, that's all I'm living right now is this. So, I mean, in my mind, it's crystal clear, but, that I'm dealing with this every day. The reality is that we feel like this gives us the best shot, and when we had this discussion, you were breathing a whole lot easier, and just the timelines and trying to get to the constraints and to get the things that we want, done in a timely manner.
I mean, and I'll be realistic, I mean, we added a bathroom, Becky, didn't we, a year ago? It took us 8 months to get a bathroom permit.
I just did my.
And think of this project, and so the point is, we may start it, say, oh, we're ambitious, we're gonna do all this summer, and the city does not have the staff or resources to review it. And I think they export all the review now to another company who looks at it completely different than the city might have. So again, I think time is our friend in terms of it, and not disrupting our classes is the best result we get out of that.
Yeah, there's some built-in slack time that we don't have to have kids on that campus August. We've got able to move things around. Be honest, guys, the more information that we have, the better, the more comfortable I am with it.
Decisions.
And even though it's confusing, it's this discussion amongst ourselves, amongst each other, should help us. And, be able to say, I don't get it. Or I don't see how that should start here before this. This is, the more information we have, the better, my opinion is that we can make good decisions that will, it's gonna cost money regardless, it's gonna cost money, but we can make better decisions than what we're doing.
You kind of hit a good point. The thought with the junior high was, are those all necessities? No, but the thing is we have the time to get them done this summer, where if we don't do them now, then we're going to do them.
I just need you to show me the money.
Huh?
I just need you to show me the money, and make sure that it's not gonna
We
take
feel
away
better about it now.
from the early childhood center, which
Yeah.
has been our priority. You show me the money,
I got it.
and I'm fine with that. I just, not
Okay,
taking
well, I have a
away from the
question
early
about money.
childhood center.
I'm still
No.
not with, all right. The total amount for this project right now is
Which project?
both,
Is-
everything.
Everything.
Okay.
Okay, so phase one, 2, and 3. or yellow, phase one, and yellow, blue, green, not purple, not gray, is $6.2 million. Yes?
Yes.
No?
For,
Mr. Adams, is that
So,
correct?
I would say it's probably like 5.9.
5.9.
2.7
So we'll
plus.
round up so we have a cushion.
Yeah,
From the fund balance, we're making no decisions tonight, but when we come Thursday, 3 million from fund balance and the rest from tax maintenance.
I think that's what he's been, yes.
Yes?
Yes, I think
Okay.
that's generally what's been presented.
All right,
So Mr. Adams has,
okay. I'm finished.
I am on board with the phasing, I'm okay with the, the money and now that we've seen all of that and, but I can't wrap my head around if we're just gonna move one grade, to me, it just makes more sense to move pre-K.
There's just not as many of them.
then you,
part of the problem is, I believe, when you have pre-K separate, you have to have this, something with child nutrition. We're gonna have to, there's an issue with child nutrition when you have pre-K.
They'd be the
by
only ones
themselves.
on the campus.
Because nobody else would be with them, and that creates they have to have a whole separate menu that,
Is our assumption that the yellow portion, the first story is the assumption the first story yellow portion will be done over the summer?
Well, even if they're not, you can
Oh.
go to the other.
and then phase two
He's-
is gonna.
he's saying
they
it's
gonna
not-
over
it
the
won't be
summer,
done.
so.
And so again, is that best to have them split up in that scenario versus staying where they are? I mean, again, I understand, that's the
Because right
question.
now, I'm gonna tell you, if we move pre-K over there, they're gonna be in tiny little rooms. Right now, they're in big classrooms.
Right
Bigger
now-
than what they would have on this campus, so.
Right now, though, they have to be super quiet because of all of the other kids. They have to be they could be in their own space. The outside would be done, so it'd be easier for them to do recess. They're already not doing specials, so you don't need to have staff travel and split their time. That's a pain in the butt. 5th grade, half of those teachers probably won't even be staying at Arthur. They're probably gonna either go up to 6th grade or something. I don't know. And then you're gonna have your current 4th graders move next year to Arthur, when that's already like the biggest challenge for 5th graders. And then they're gonna move again the following year to do 6th grade at the junior high. I don't know. Pre-K is already starting a brand new school somewhere. Right? So
We can
why
look at
not
the numbers,
move?
but, I mean, I think the logistics of it, we'd have to look at it.
There'd be
There are
room.
other considerations to sit there and look at with that.
There would be room, because you have 6 pre-K classes at Delaney right now. So you move those 6 into the space at Arthur. That team is already functioning and doing what they're doing on their own. We're already gonna have to hire several new 5th grade teachers, and they're gonna need support from, I don't know. I just don't see it working as well to have 5th grade on its own.
And however we stage it for next year, the main thing is with this, I mean, you're getting, however we stage it for next year, that can be decided later, right now,
Well, I thought
moving
we
forward
were-
with the phasing, that's the big thing.
I'm on
so
board
that
with
these
that,
guys
but I
know
thought we
what
were
to do,
talking about
so.
that too, because it was
Well,
brought up in a change.
I think it
so-
depends on what you can get done over the summer. If we can't get the classrooms done over the summer, then the question is, what are you gonna, put the pre-K in a construction area, or leave a 5th grade in construction area, or less construction area? That's the question I have.
So how much time as a district do you need to know that we could reassess at
The
the end of
reality
the
is you're
summer?
gonna have to move all the 5th grade teacher stuff out, you're gonna have to move all the books out, you're gonna have to move all the, and then you're gonna have to move the pre-K over, so that's, where, right now,
We'll be packed up regardless,
there's only,
probably.
5th grade's
Many of
already
them
there.
are staying.
Yeah.
But
So-
again, how much time do you need, like, let's say at the end of a summer, a window of time that you need to say,
We
this
can
is,
look at logistics, we'll start looking at logistics about the other.
as the husband of a school teacher, as much time as possible, because I'm the one that usually has to move that stuff. And if I'm moving from one campus to another one, and then moving it back, it is not one of those, let's just say the teachers have a lot of stuff that they have
Yeah.
crammed in those.
And for that reason, then why don't we look to see how many fifth grade teachers want to stay at Arthur? Because that's what we keep saying, let's keep them, it's gonna be easier for them, but I don't think it's many.
So if you're saying not many of them are gonna stay, what are you gonna put them?
Say it again?
If you're saying not many fifth grade teachers are gonna stay or wanna stay at Arthur, and you wanna move the fifth grade to, the elementaries, okay, what difference does that make if there are gonna be new teachers, no matter which way?
Because
Yeah.
at least they're gonna have the support from a whole group of other specials teacher, I have a feeling if we are saying people are gonna be trapped, because we're not gonna have a full-time staff for all of those specials classes for one grade level. You think I don't think we would.
It's a campus, you're gonna have the group that you have. And
You're
even
talking
if you're
about
doing,
the
you're only
art
talking about
teacher
1
going
year.
from this school to this school to
Right,
this
it's
school
gonna be
and
someone
a
that's
traveler.
traveling,
Which
so
what
the
they do
time-
already.
One at a time, guys.
Okay,
The traveling is what you're,
Worried about.
which I think they're doing already anyway, on Pete's part. Counselors will go from campus to campus.
I only know about the band, and the band person traveled.
Yeah,
No, I'm talking specials that they're supposed to have every day, and I don't see it being a full-time.
Now that, yeah.
and you're only talking, what, 3 blocks?
Yeah.
If you're talking going from Delaney down there. But
I mean, right,
Pre-K is also, sorry, the other thing I was gonna mention was, it is a nightmare in that parking lot at Delaney.
I agree.
Drop off and pick up,
I-
because they all have to be walked and picked up by hand at the door, and it is a nightmare. Pre-K wants to get out of that building.
I'm sure everyone wants to be in the new space that's more functional. That's a good statement. I think that's true. The question is, if it's a parking issue, we also, again, we haven't talked about it, the opportunity is, we got that space that we could change the drive configuration now when we tore out that building. And we tore out, because we can now make the drives work better. There are lots of things that we can do to transition. So there's nothing being perfect. I'm sitting there saying, okay, move the fifth graders from their current campus back to an elementary school, right? That's what we're talking about. So, and then you move your pre-K up. So who's gonna get the large classrooms at the elementary schools? Kindergartners? They won't use them all, so some other class.
You're gonna have to move the kindergarten into those classrooms.
I mean,
Either way though, because if you keep fifth grade for functionality and ease of moving, they're just gonna have to move the following year, so. Huh? No, I thought something.
Right, but you're not moving everybody else in classrooms too, which is the other side of it. I mean, I'm thinking in terms of if I had a child, you're right, I like for them to be where they're gonna be and be there forever. I mean, I love that. But I don't know that moving a pre-K over or a kindergarten over, then move them back to the elementary at some point. They're not, well, for 2 years they won't,
Yeah,
for 2 years.
but then the other grades would, they'd be, Ella Glover would be going
Yes, she will.
next year, and then the year after, and it's already, like, I have a fifth grade,
So-
it's a big change.
I agree with you. I think that this is the one thing that I find frustrating about this, is that we did not want to do this.
Yeah, I'm like, we fought so hard to avoid.
I don't
all
think
the
it makes sense.
changes.
I do think it doesn't make sense, though, at the same time, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can say about it is what is more disruptive to learning is moving these younger ones or fifth graders after 1 year. I mean,
Because
it's the only
Arthur-
thing I can,
Yeah, pre-K, they're already going to a new school next year, and then they'll be at that same school for 2 more years, for kindergarten the following year, for first grade the year after that, so they're set.
I'm gonna remind you, it's just for 1 year. So it's not like it's gonna be 1 year, one transition year, and then we should be, everybody should be.
And we're all
Yeah.
speculating on whether or not we can get this project done over the summer. That's the concern I have. That, it's hard to make the plan now. We think we will, but I promise you that I think when we get to permits, we'll hear for a meeting or two, we're waiting on the city to complete the permit. And now we've lost 4 weeks. What do we do? I mean, to me, teachers saying, do I move or do I stay? I mean, right now, the fifth grade teachers are there. They're where they're gonna be right now, right? If they stay, whether they stay or not, the fifth grade classrooms are there now. So that's one group that stays. Everybody else stays at the elementary. We don't have any major change there for a year. You have one class, the fifth grade class is affected. They go up and then they go up again, yes. And eventually, the year after that, they're all gonna go to the junior high and be there for 2 years. You know, I mean, sorry, 1 year after they stay at the elementary camp. I mean, I want it to be done, but I don't think that we've really captured the possibility that no matter what we do, we are hamstrung by things outside our control. And, you know, the idea of moving kids in there while there's construction going on just seems to be somewhat of a mistake.
Well, someone's gonna be there.
Yeah, but they're gonna be the other wing that's not gonna have all that. I mean, you're talking about finishing out all the finishes and everything done in that first floor building in the summer. That's where the biggest work is. We're talking about finishes on the first and second floor of the other building. We're not talking about anything near as big. I just worry that we won't get it accomplished, and it's not that we didn't try.
Yeah.
I sense the frustration, that the idea that we wanted the kids to have continuity for 2 or 3 years at every campus. You know, that made perfect sense.
If it makes you feel better, Debbie, I did junior high in the admin building for 7th grade, and then 8th grade, I went to the building that burned down, and I turned out all right. Okay?
No, you didn't.
Say the jury's out. No.
I'm just saying, pre-Ks used to function. They functioned on their own before they even came into Delaney this year. So to me,
Well, how about we wait and see if the building can accommodate it in terms of construction, and we can make a decision.
I just don't want it to be off the table, and I just wanted to present why I feel like.
I don't think anything's off the table. I think
Nope.
you have a point.
I was gonna put something
Come over
out
here to the
there.
microphone so we can all hear you.
Absolutely.
I think all of you make very valid points, and I see both sides, absolutely. But just one thing to consider, can you hear me? One thing to consider is, we put out a survey to the Arthur teachers. Do you want to go to junior high? Do you want to go to 5th grade at Delaney? Do you want to go to 5th grade at Patterson? We were looking at the survey data, and they either wanted to go to 6th grade or they wanted to go to 5th grade at Patterson with Carrie Clark. And so I think that Carrie Clark staying at Arthur is going to change the results of the survey. In fact, I think we're going to have to do another one. So I spent a lot of time on the staffing. That's why I have all the numbers, and we've been working on them. And then whenever this conversation came up, I stopped because it's hard to put a lot of time and energy into something that may not be relevant. Contracts are going to be coming out for teachers soon. So we put principals give names to HR, and then the names come to you all, and then you'll take action on them. And one concern that has been expressed by teachers is that they don't know where they're going to be, but they're supposed to sign a contract. And so you said, wait, fair, that's fair, but that may put us in a place where teachers are expected to sign a contract and not, am I going to be, where am I going to be? Am I going to be at Patterson? Am I going to be at Delaney? Am I going to be at Arthur? And we could lose really good people because of fear of it, of the future, of, the uncertainty. So just in terms of waiting, just something to consider is that it's contract season and things are going out. And so making a decision, whether it's pre-K or 5th grade or whatever it is we want to do, sooner than later, I think, is in the service of our staff. By just giving them information, because nobody likes uncertainty in their future. And it's hard enough to be an educator right now. So, anything kind that we can do for the teachers, I think is worth it.
But that being said, it makes more sense to me that we have a functional building for a certain grade level right now. And we have functional buildings, and I know they say they want to move, but we have functional buildings that can accommodate those classes now. Their stability is, they don't want to take a chance, okay? This next year, this is what it's going to be. It's pretty clear to me that in that scenario, 5th grade teachers are there. Their concern was whether they had the same principal, right?
I can't speak to that. I can only make inferences.
I would agree with what you just said, Mr. Hart, because I think this is a certainty that 5th graders can stay there. The uncertainty is how much of that other building will get done. We can all hope, but that's an uncertainty, and like you said, that will affect staff. So while I don't like the multiple transitions either, given the circumstances, it is probably the most prudent way to go.
Given that we've decided that we're gonna do phaseology, okay? I think in this, we do need to stick with something that's most certain. I wanted to hear all the different points. But I do think that by sticking with something that we know already works and the challenges of what might or might not happen over the summer, you know, I think that the fifth graders staying where they are, you know, for me, feels like a good idea for them. So, in case anybody wanted to know.
I think it's,
Yes.
you know, we can kind of think about it, I know it's 2 days to think about it, and, you know, if we feel like we need to give some sort of consensus of this, you know, we all can vote our conscience and say, here's what I feel, you know, and so the staff knows, Mr. G knows, you know, that all of us want to do something different, then they'll say, okay, we'll do this different. If we're split up on it, then I think we have to defer to the educational experts saying this is what the best option is from the standpoint of education and processing and building and all those things.
I just want to be clear, my opinion is not that phase one can be done over the summer. I do not think that is feasible. We can have that conversation with whoever the awarded contractor is, and the priority would be the secure vestibule and go as quickly as you can elsewhere. But, you know, getting these materials and things that have to go into that phase one, I do not think it can be
I don't,
accomplished over
phase
that
one,
summer.
this won't be done by the summer, so I don't.
But phase one will be done through the school year
Yeah,
on the other, okay,
I mean,
You're talking about yellow?
yellow.
Okay,
Yeah,
By December.
My estimate is
correct, that's what I have written down.
Reasonable timeline for the yellow area. And, you know, during that time period, we would start the documents for phase two, the green areas.
What else we need to go over?
That's everything on our agenda, but I want to make sure that we're going to come in on Thursday. We got to talk about voting on how we do that new piece, we're talking about the junior high piece, how we, construction management, that's a thing we have to vote on, so that they can start picking a person to do that, to get those papers and documents drawn. And the rest of it is kind of how we feel about it. If we wanted to have a conversation again, I'll open the floor for that somewhere in the agenda on the building. Anything else to discuss? Any other issues? Do you want to go back over? Any other clarification that we can get tonight while everybody's here?
I'm gonna see you in 2 days.
I do have another question.
Sure.
So, sixth graders moving over to the junior high, we feel needs some modifications done there. Fifth grades going over to the two elementaries, anything that needs to be done there or taken into consideration there?
Good question.
For fifth grade going over?
Yes.
Other than removing stuff, no,
Okay.
not to my knowledge.
And
I think.
You think
restrooms,
classrooms?
restrooms, there was up to change some of the
Anything it'd
restrooms.
be like switching out some toilets.
Yeah.
Our guys would do that.
At the elementary school,
Yes.
they are fourth grade, they just stay there.
Okay. I think we talked about this before, and I think our maintenance could actually do whatever, if there's any changes in
I think we
restrooms.
talked about the playground, maybe the section of the playground that,
I don't think we
current
talked about
Arthur going
anything.
over. I mean, just anything else, because, you know, suddenly a change in the grades made a change at the junior high. Anything else that needs to be considered when we're making these changes?
Well, I think I bet you'll hear in 4 months that when you look at the projects, what each campus needs, you'll say, this campus could benefit by, you know, maybe the junior high said we could benefit by better science wing. You know, there are things that are gonna come up.
Right.
But they're not affecting the functionality.
We have lots of things, but I mean,
That's a common concern.
I will tell you one thing is the drive around Delaney, getting the traffic situation better around Delaney and
Right.
and that parking area. We just had a conversation today to get the light posts taken out and start getting that parking lot, you know, area ready to grade down and see what we're gonna do there with the drive. And, you know, that may be part of the consideration, but we're not there yet, so.
And we talk about our maintenance guys doing stuff. I mean, if you look at the postings, we need maintenance guys. We're gonna take them off one project to put them on another project? I mean, when are we gonna do that? I mean, you know, it's nice to think we will, but we don't have enough people in certain places right now. And hopefully that changes as people feel more comfortable that COVID's not gonna affect us anymore, but I don't know. Anything else? Any other questions? We got the guys here. Is it time to clarify what we don't have clarified? I appreciate the concerns. I wish, you know, I wish the government would give us $10 million to fix buildings.
I do have a question. Did an engineer already go out to Arthur to investigate that restroom issue?
Yes, they did.
Is that gonna increase the cost of
No,
repair of that?
we'll be fine.
Okay, that's good. And is that something, since that is on a hallway that's not being used, could that be potentially started before construction in the summer?
I don't think that's a priority, though.
The smell?
It's
The
on the,
restroom?
well, no, it is a priority, but I
That's a
mean,
priority.
the kids are not gonna be on that side of the building. They're gonna be on the
No, I'm
other
just
side,
thinking
and we're gonna
for
get
the
that security
whole-
vestibule, and then the rest of it's gonna be done.
But if that's a part of phase one, and that is something that no one is there right now, I'm just asking if that would be something that could be addressed before.
So we would have to kind of break that out of the set and have that bid separately, permitted separately, as opposed to right now, it's all lumped together with
Yeah,
the
I
current
figured
project, so
probably
it,
was a whole, but
it adds
had to ask.
sure, another level of complexity, I
But you know,
guess.
if we figure out the problem with smell in that one, maybe we can duplicate on any other campus that are having an issue. Because I'm hoping it's more venting than anything else, I'm hoping.
What their investigation found was the dry traps for not being used and the seals broken, so not extensive demo, that would have to happen to fix the problem.
And you know, folks, that happens in new buildings. The building I was in that was the village right there in front of the soccer fields, second floor. I would have to literally go down and pour a pitcher of water into the trap in the bathroom to cut out the methane smell. Okay? It happens if you don't, that's how those traps work. You gotta spill water on the floor to make them stay wet and trap the air. But
I guess the day they visited, it's bad in that smaller restroom, but they also, same issues in the other restroom that we're touching, so, yeah, it's,
So maybe make sure they do that in Delaney too.
It's definitely worse at Arthur, but yeah, I've smelled it
Check
in
them all.
Delaney too.
If it's P-traps, then maybe that's one of our maintenance things. Every 4 days, somebody pours a gallon of water into the trap line.
Had that one bathroom shut off, and now the other one's been shut off, so.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions? You ready to go, I know. Anything else? All right, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:37.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion by Mr. Clovier,
Second.
second by Ms. Douglas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:38. Thank you all. See you Thursday.